Welcome to the Boeing Blue Sky Aviation Gallery, located on the Wings Over the Rockies Exploration of Flight campus. This facility is located on one of the busiest general aviation airports in the country, where guests have the ability to get up close and personal with the field of aerospace. The Blue Sky Gallery is home to active aircraft, FAA-approved simulators, a drone zone, exhibits that demonstrate the forces of flight, and our Clay Lacy Field of Dreams flight ramp. Our ramp has 17 tie-down spaces and a helipad that routinely hosts unique aircraft. Activities you can experience on the ramp include our Teacher Flight program, which flies local educators and a 1936 Stearman. The Young Eagles program that takes kids on a free flight over the Colorado Front Range. And recurring fly-ins and weekend showcases that give guests incredible access to aircraft and pilots from all eras and industries. The Exploration of Flight campus will continue to grow as a hub for aerospace with the addition of our Osmond Black Sky Space Gallery. Like the Blue Sky Gallery, this space-focused facility will use interactive, hands-on learning to educate our future aerospace leaders. What we're creating here at Exploration of Flight is helping to establish the great state of Colorado as the nation's Aerospace Alley. The Blue Sky Gallery is a place where you can get inspired, you can learn, or you can actively engage in the field of aerospace. I hope you discover your place in Aerospace Alley during your next visit.
Hello, my name is Michael Allen. I'm a volunteer and member of the board of directors at Wings Over the Rockies. I've spent 37 years of my life in aerospace, and I'm excited to be here today to talk about Aerospace Alley. As part of my role with Wings Over the Rockies, I chair the education committee for the board of directors. And one of the programs that we have, you can see behind me today, is the build of an RV-12 airplane, which is being built by students. As part of the Wings Aerospace Pathways, students have access to technical skills like building airplanes and getting involved in the skills required to be an airframe and power plant mechanic. And there's programs for aspiring pilots. Through the generous support from the Ray Foundation and the Captain Jeppesen Foundation, aspiring pilots have the opportunity to get their ground certifications, going to ground school, and also some opportunities to learn how to fly powered airplanes and gliders. Wings Over the Rockies created and supports the Aerospace Alley Education Committee. Starting in October of 2020, the Education Committee will be spearheading a program to bring CTE aviation pathways to the state of Colorado through the school systems. This will allow any school district in the state of Colorado to access these programs, keeping in mind that many of the schools in the state are in rural areas and don't have access to programs like these within their own communities. Through all these diverse programs that we have through Wings Over the Rockies, we're trying to bring together resources so that we can support students throughout the state in their quest to join the aviation and aerospace profession. You can help by donating meaningfully to Wings Over the Rockies and the aerospace programs that support children. These programs are going to be the future of aerospace in this country and the future of aerospace and aviation in Colorado. Thank you.
Good evening to everyone at Wings Over the Rockies and in Aerospace Alley. I'm glad to be here today with you. I'm Tracy Cernan-Woolley, daughter of Gene Cernan, the last man to walk on the moon. When my dad and Jack explored Taurus Littrow in 1972, I was 9 years old, and I was so proud of him. I remember going on the Today Show and telling them that he promised to bring me a moonbeam. That would be a special gift for a 9-year-old that idolized her daddy. But he did something even more exciting. On the last spacewalk, he went out next to the lunar rover and he leaned down and he wrote my initials, TDC, in the lunar dust. Now that is a gesture that only he and I will ever be able to share. Dad's last words on the moon were, "America's challenge of today forged man's destiny for tomorrow." And he loved talking to students to inspire them to go out and find their destiny. Please consider joining us in Wings Over the Rockies, develop America's Aerospace Alley, and our next generation of space explorers. Thank you.
Hi, I'm retired Lieutenant Colonel Tracy LaTourette, call sign Jackie O. I flew the F-16 with the Colorado Air National Guard right down the road at Buckley Air Force Base. I'm an Aerospace Alley champion because I'm an Aerospace Alley product. I grew up in Evergreen, just west of Denver, high in the mountains, above even the clouds on some days. And at night, I felt so close to the stars, like I could reach up and touch them. I cheered for my brother on his first solo in Boulder. I looked forward to going to Stapleton Airport and watching the planes fly in and out as we got to pick my dad up from work every week. And I was thrilled to win my first ever state gymnastics championship title down in Colorado Springs at the U.S. Air Force Academy. If you haven't checked it out yet, you really need to go experience it for yourself. The first time I walked through those hallowed halls, I knew there was something special about that place. I felt like I had to walk a little taller to pay my respect to the warriors who had gone before me, some paying the ultimate price to sacrifice for our great nation's freedom. When I accepted my Air Force Academy nomination from President George Bush Sr. and launched my Air Force career, I had no idea that I would someday return and become Colorado's first lady fighter pilot. That option didn't even exist when I was a cadet. All I knew was that for my first solo, I would get to fly over Colorado Springs, the majestic mountains as the backdrop, enjoying all this great state has to offer young aviators. I am so grateful for the mentors I've had along the way. I encourage you to be a mentor, find a mentor. Everyone needs a wingman on their aerospace journey. Whether you already have deep ties to aerospace or you are just discovering your love of the sky and the stars, you'll find there's a place for you right here in Colorado's Aerospace Alley.
Good evening. My name is John Barry, and I have the honor of being the president and CEO of Wings Over the Rockies Air and Space Museum. Tonight we're on a mission to raise funds for Wings Over the Rockies, and the way we will do it this evening is by supporting an exciting announcement, or launch as we call it, of a new initiative called Aerospace Alley. Not only is Colorado geographically closer to space, where more important, groundbreaking aerospace ideas and innovations start here, but big mountains, bigger skies, and determined leadership in Colorado are beckoning a new generation to look up and spread the wings. Today, our aerospace industry leads the next generation of GPS and military space operation, creates innovation in solar and electrical powered aviation engines, and studies the science of solar winds and tides, black holes, neutron stars, and pulsars. It's in our DNA. The Wings Over the Rockies mission is to educate and inspire persons of all ages on aviation and space. Promoting Colorado as Aerospace Alley fits perfectly with our mission. Thanks to investments from industry partners and from Boeing to Sierra Nevada, Ball Aerospace, and Lockheed Martin, Wings Over the Rockies Air and Space Museum was named among CNN Travel's top 20 air and space museums around the world, and USA Today's top 10 aerospace museums in America in 2019. At our Denver's historical Lowry Air Force Base site, a growing museum conveys the inspiration of our aerospace heritage. Simultaneously, a futuristic flight-based exploration of flight campus is in phased development on 15 acres at one of the nation's best and busiest airports, Centennial Airport. As a focal point of Aerospace Alley exploration of flight at Centennial Airport, this campus will inspire and educate future generations to explore and discover worlds we scarcely can imagine today. The Boeing Blue Sky Aviation Gallery at Centennial Airport is already open on the campus, providing hands-on aviation activities, including complimentary flight experiences for young people, as well as flights for Colorado teachers, all for free. Also located on the Exploration of Flight campus, Colorado Skies Academy is an aerospace charter middle school, uniquely motivating hundreds of students for America's future workforce. Still to come will be the Black Sky Gallery, offering a simulated flight through the cosmos. As America confronts growing workforce gaps in its aerospace economy, a renewal of ambition and excitement in launching from a somewhat unsung location. California, Florida, and Texas quickly come to mind as centers for aerospace. With Aerospace Alley, we have a rallying cry for the aerospace industry in Colorado, much like Silicon Valley became the center of the tech revolution in Northern California, and how Austin, Texas became the live music capital of the world. We need to claim our ground, including every part of Colorado, from the plains to the Front Ranges to the Rocky Mountains. We are all part of Aerospace Alley. Lofty goals? Yes, but no less lofty than America's need to remain in aerospace leadership positions. Now, throughout history, aerospace has always inspired us to be, special, to rise to a challenge. The time-proven learning context of flight can launch young lives to a trajectory of exploration, discovery, and can-do spirit. It's said that a young child hears the word no over 400 times a day. Let it be known that we said yes and gave them wings for their dreams. Join us. Tonight, support Wings with your purchases of large silent auctions and call for cash as we listen to our special guest tonight. Let us begin.
Hello, everyone. I'm so pleased to join you for today's official launch by Wings Over the Rockies of Aerospace Alley. As the Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Colorado and the chair of the Colorado Space Coalition, I'm passionate about supporting Colorado's aerospace innovation and leadership. Colorado has always been a gateway to America's frontiers. Generations of Coloradans have cast their sights upward to big mountains and bigger skies for inspiration and achievement. This mindset, in addition to our physical location being a mile high closer to space, has fueled a robust and dynamic aerospace ecosystem. Our unique blend of military installations and commands, private aerospace companies, academic and research institutions, and government entities has propelled our state to top in the nation for private aerospace employment per capita, with the second largest aerospace economy. More than 180 aerospace companies call Colorado home, as do close to 200,000 workers. New developments, like the provisional home of the U.S. Space Command at Peterson-Schreiber Garrison and a permanent satellite office of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, continue to push the industry to greater heights. And of course, we continue to work to ensure that Colorado will be the permanent home of the U.S. Space Command. Colorado's unique aerospace ecosystem will ensure the success of the operational mission for generations to come. This heritage and leadership deserves an identity to protect it and nurture it, in the same way that Silicon Valley supports Northern California's tech industry. Tonight's formal launch of America's Aerospace Alley will do just that, by capturing the unique collection of industry, educational, and cultural partnerships that allow Colorado's aerospace industry to thrive. Aerospace Alley will ensure that Colorado continues to lead, to innovate, and to grow in the crucial aerospace industry. Aerospace Alley makes it clear that American leadership in the space domain will always have a home base here in Colorado. What an exciting time for aerospace in Colorado, and I'm so pleased to join you for this important milestone. May our open skies and rich history of exploration continue to inspire new leaders for generations to come. So thank you, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of the program.
Hi, my name is Gabriella Smith, and I'm a student at Wings Aerospace Pathways. I'm here to introduce our special guests for tonight, Eileen Collins, Jean Krantz, and Harrison Schmidt. Moderating tonight's conversation is Eileen Collins, a retired U.S. Air Force pilot and the first woman commander of a U.S. spacecraft for her mission aboard the Columbia in 1999. Also joining us is Jean Krantz. Jean was the flight director for all the Project Gemini missions and the Apollo 11 lunar landing. He is also famous for his leadership of the Apollo 13 Tiger team. Our third guest is Dr., Senator, and Apollo 17 astronaut Harrison Schmitt. As the last of 12 human beings to walk on the moon in December of 1972, he explored the lunar surface as both an astronaut and geologist. Please enjoy this conversation between these amazing aerospace legends.
Good evening. Tonight we're launching Aerospace Alley, so Colorado can lead the way in preparing the future, educating our students, educating our workforce, and continuing Colorado's role as a leader in air and space. My first question is, we'll start with you, Jack. My first question is, how does the effort from the Apollo program compare with the effort that we are attempting today, putting astronauts back on the moon in 2024?
Well, the effort's going to have to be pretty much the same. Apollo pretty well set the bar for how you get to the moon safely and how you return safely. That was an important bar to have been set, and Artemis is going to have to pretty much do many of the same things that Apollo did. Now, there's a big difference today. We have some commercial partners that we did not have in those days who are doing many of the same things. We had commercial partners because the Apollo program was a system of contractors. There were over 400,000 Americans involved, most of them in the contractor force. NASA had only about 50,000 of that number, so you can see that most of it was done through contractors. The contracting, though, today is very different for Artemis, but the challenges of working in deep space and the risk of working in deep space haven't changed. And so they really, Apollo has, I think, given them many of the lessons necessary for Artemis to succeed.
Yeah, and so you did it, Jack, and so we know that it can be done. And Jean, would you like to add anything to that? You know, how do you think that today's attempt to go back to the moon compares to what we did in the Apollo program?
Well, I think that the environment is significantly different. We had John F. Kennedy, who made the lunar speech at Congress, and he made it at Rice University. And this, to a great extent, inspired a nation. He defined a very clear goal. He established a time frame for its accomplishment. And to a great extent, he said why we should go ahead with this grand venture. And the beauty was that we had a generation of young people who were ready to step in to the ranks of not only mission control, but all over the United States in the workforce. Because right after Sputnik, they had established a student defense loan program that provided money for young people to go through college. And I had many of these young people who were arriving just at the beginning of the Gemini program. I had people who had grown up in Indian reservations. I mean, the state of Oklahoma is incredible in the number of people. They provided several flight directors, controllers. So basically, we had a unified nation moving forward with a grand messenger, and I think that's what we need today. We need this messenger to sell the program.
You know, I'm really glad you brought that up, because if I remember correctly, the act that you were talking about was passed by Congress, called the National Defense Education Act of 1958. They came out post Sputnik, and they did offer. Well, I think one of the needs was to get some of these engineers teaching in high school to help inspire the young people to choose engineering and science and math degrees. And I think that was pretty successful. I think that, you know, we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get to the end of our conversation here, but I'm glad that you mentioned that. And, you know, one other thing that I would, this question is for Jean, is you think back to Apollo 17, or frankly, I know you were flight director for many missions in the Apollo program. Do you have any stories, or maybe one particular story that you'd like to pass on, you know, that maybe would be inspirational, or, you know, help us start thinking about the future?
The real challenge of Apollo 17 was leading the team that basically would be flying the last mission in that program, because there was a lot of what I'd say concern relative to where do we go after the moon. And the unfortunate thing was people felt that the lunar program was the end, but basically I found the Skylab program, which followed. An incredible program to learn to keep man in space for up to 30, 60, 90 days at a time, learn about the sciences, move in with a generation of pioneering scientists in studying astronomy, earth sciences. So basically it was a question of challenging the team that I had to accept the fact that the future was exciting, it had change, it had opportunities, get ready.
Yeah, I actually wrote a paper on the Skylab program when I was working on my master's degree. So I found that to be very inspirational also. So I'd like to go back to you, Jack. If you could think back to Apollo 17 also, if there's, maybe a story or something maybe that surprised you while you were walking on the surface of the moon that, you got there and you were all ready with your mission. And as a geologist, I know you had a plan out there and, maybe you were hoping to make some discoveries while you were on the moon, but could you, maybe share a story or a surprise from the mission with us?
I think one of the main lessons that I feel very important, and I obviously felt it was important for a long time, is that we put a field geologist in astronaut clothes with astronaut training on the moon to use the experience of field geology that geologist had, namely yours truly, in order to advance the exploration of that small planet. And that advancement has not stopped. A scientist, a field geologist like myself, continues to work on the information from Apollo today. And I think it's very, very important that every mission now to the moon, Artemis or otherwise, include field geology experience. It's going to be additive, in spite of the fact that I was able to convince Sal Shepard and Deke Slayton that we should have a simulation-based field geology training program for all the astronauts. And nevertheless, you cannot duplicate experience. You can't duplicate it for test pilots, as you well know, and you can't duplicate it for explorers. You train as best you can, but that experience and intuition, and as Gene Shoemaker used to say, perspicacity that comes with experience is extremely important. So I think that's one of the lessons, one of the major lessons that comes from Apollo 17. Another major lesson is that even though, as Gene has indicated, it was the last of the Apollo series and many of the people who made Apollo successful would now go on to other things, nevertheless, they came together as a team to make Apollo 17, from a technical point of view, I think the most successful of all the Apollo missions. That's extraordinary. And we had no significant failures. Sure, the commander broke a fender off the lunar rover, and the flight controllers solved that problem for us very quickly overnight. But that was a minor issue compared to some of the problems that were faced by earlier missions, and from which Apollo 17 clearly benefited.
Hi, I'm Hetty Carlson with the Wings Over the Rockies Teacher Flight Program. Today I would like to talk about our sponsor, Alpine Bank. You are proud to call Colorado home, and so is Alpine Bank, which has been giving back to communities that they serve since 1973. Alpine employees support hundreds of vital organizations like Wings with their time and talent, volunteering more than 14,000 hours last year alone. We are so grateful Alpine is a Mars Colony level sponsor of this event. Thank you, Alpine Bank.
As a member of the Artemis generation, it's an exciting time to be working in aerospace law. I chose Sherman & Howard because it's one of the few law firms with a dedicated aerospace practice and a footprint in Colorado and Arizona, centers of the aerospace industry.
Yeah, I remember how disappointed I was when the Apollo program was canceled, because I was being very interested in what was going on. I was a aspiring astronaut myself back in those days, and it was disappointing to see the program canceled because I mean, there was so much more left to explore. So Jack, to pick up on one of the things you said, so, you know, young people often ask me, you know, what do I need to do to become an astronaut? And I tell them, as you look to the future, the skills I would look for if I was hiring astronauts would be a combination of engineering and geology, because of the missions that we plan on flying. So could you tell us, you know, think back to when you chose your major, what was it that inspired you to choose your college major, geology?
Well, my college major really was influenced by my experience with my father, who was an exploration geologist in the mining industry. And I grew up being his field assistant, his bureau, if you will, carrying samples and the like, and actually as a surveyor. So when I enrolled at Caltech, I was not thinking geology, as a matter of fact. I was thinking physics. I felt like I would become the world's greatest physicist by going to Caltech. And I soon realized within the first week or two that the world's greatest physicists were sitting on either side of me, and that I was going to really drop back to something I loved anyway. Geology, field geology in particular, gets you outdoors. It's science, it's basic science applied to Earth problems. It's really a very exciting field. And at the same time, I was learning engineering, a beginning of engineering, the basics of physics and math being extremely important. That later on benefited me as I, in the legal sense, read engineering with my colleagues at NASA, people like Gene Kranz and others who over several years prior to Apollo 17 really taught me the basic fundamental issues and concepts of engineering. So your geology and engineering are certainly two fields, but I would also add that anybody aspiring to work in space, whether on Earth or in space itself, should get as broad an education as possible. Become a specialist, know how to be a specialist in some field, but get as broad an education as you possibly can. Mathematics being a fundamental part of everything that we do, that's important, but also the humanities. I think understanding the context, the historical context in which a space is being explored is extremely important as well. And so broad education, great physical training, to keep physically active all the time. And I, of course, still argue that all astronauts should become jet pilots. I found that an extremely valuable experience for my activities as an astronaut.
Yeah, I think, Jack, I think all of that is actually great advice. And I just have to throw in here, 2 weeks ago, I was in Zion National Park up in Utah. What an absolutely beautiful place. But I was a math major, but I got to tell you, I also started out as a physics major and switched over to math. But more on that later. I wanted to go back to Gene and ask you the same question. So you were an aerospace engineer, and I wondered if you, in college, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about, you know, why you chose that degree for yourself, and then maybe, you know, a little more on maybe some advice for young people that want to work in the space program someday as far as choosing a degree.
Well, actually, I started off in an entirely different direction. I grew up in a military boarding house during World War II, and I was surrounded by naval aviators from the Great Lakes Naval Air Training Center. I was working at many jobs there because I had to help support my mother. And I had two high school teachers who apparently thought that I had some talent that was basically not being used yet. And they coached me for the entrance examination for the Naval Academy. And I passed the examination, got the appointment, but unfortunately the diet I'd been following working didn't basically provide the entrance capabilities that I needed. I was diabetic at that time. And basically I found a scholarship for deceased veterans of World War I. Provided $500, believe it or not. You could get into college for $500 at that time. And I went to a small aviation college, Parks College in East St. Louis, Illinois, mainly because I was going to fly. That was my entire dream. And I went through parks, and the ROTC instructor said, hey, don't quit now, because I was going to go into the cadet program. But he said, no, finish your degree, get your education. And I did, went into the Air Force. I actually flew the first 3 mass-produced jets, the F-80, 86, and F-100. And when I came back from Korea, I became a flight test engineer in the B-52. This was the first time that I really used any of my engineering education. And from then on, basically the story was, at the completion of a very successful test program, basically I applied to NASA. They're looking for qualified engineers, and from then on, it was a ball. I had a blast every minute of my life working in the arena of space.
So I want to switch gears here a little bit and maybe start moving towards talking about Aerospace Alley, which is why we're here tonight. So to set the stage, I'm currently serving as an advisor to the National Space Council. And Jack, I know you're also an advisor to the National Space Council. And Jean, I know you're a consultant. And what I wanted to do is talk about maybe some of the workforce issues our country is facing. So, you know, we've all heard the concerns. There's not enough high school science teachers. There's not enough high school math teachers. There's not enough aerospace workers right now in things like welding, electrician, machinists, pilots, and even careers like air traffic control. So we're trying to reach out to young people to get them interested in maybe just at least informed and give them the ability to get these skills. Not every young person needs to attend a 4-year college. You know, maybe they can go to a trade school, maybe they can go to a community college. So we need to introduce these ideas to our youth. So let's start with you, Jean. And I want to ask, you know, why is it so important that we prepare our youth, our young people for these roles today? I mean, could we just take adults who are currently working and move them to these industries? Or, you know, why do we need to reach out and prepare our youth for these careers?
I believe that we've got 6 kids and basically 5 girls, and I've watched them progress through their careers. And they have the passion, the energy, and the imagination to step forward and make and address challenges. They might be educational challenges, might be, what is the career path that they're going to take? How are they doing when they get out of college? And I think that young people have the ability to address these types of issues much easier than what I'd say the more established older types, those that might be in the 30s. So I think youth people, young people, have the ability to step forward and buy into an arena of risk and be very successful. I think the key thing we have to do, however, is get to the teachers, because the teachers provide the inspiration for the youth. The parents just are busy working right now, so it's really the teachers and the educational materials. I think that the documentation they have in history is almost completely devoid of space and what we've done in space and how we did it, and why we did it, and what were the challenges. So I think that you have to get into the teaching component, you have to get into the texts that they're using for the teaching.
Okay, great. And you know, it's great to hear that your 6 children listen to you, Jean, because sometimes, you know, my 2 children, they didn't always listen to me. So you're right about having the teachers, you know, involved and encouraging. Jack, any comment from you on the future workforce and things that we can do today with young people to encourage them to look into these careers that are necessary for the future space workforce?
Well, I would say that in spite of any difficulties the 2 of you have had with getting your children to listen to you, the parents have to be emphasized as well. Parents have to be encouraging to their children's future career, and I know the 2 of you have done that. But in addition, I think education, the broad public education, needs to get back to to fundamentals of teaching. Jean alluded to that in one respect, but overall, there's so many other things that have worked their way into the curriculum of public education, and clearly there are exceptions to what I'm going to say, but basically the broad area of public education has some significant deficiencies today, particularly in the teaching of history, the teaching of mathematics, and I would say maybe most importantly, exposing young people to critical thinking, to taking an issue and looking at all the factors that you can that bear on that issue, and coming up to some understanding of what the issue is and what various alternative solutions might be to that particular issue. Earlier, we discussed the question of problem solving, and one reason why I think you find engineers in demand, and even in the legal profession, is because they understand, they see a problem and they want to solve it. Unfortunately, a great deal of education now is just to treat the symptoms of problems rather than solving them. And that is part of critical thinking. So the public education system is extremely important. The charter schools, homeschooling also are very important, partly because they offer an alternative to the situation we find ourselves in today, and that is the absence of extensive teaching in history, in mathematics, and in critical thinking.
Hi, I'm Scott Henley, the content specialist at Wings Over the Rockies. As you can see, I'm the guy behind the scenes making Wings' awesome video content, including Behind the Wings, paper airplane tutorials with Gus Posey, and yes, even the program you're watching right now. I wanted to take a pause to ask for your financial support, and to help me along the way is our Director of Education.
Thanks, Scott. Hi, I'm April Lynott, the Director of Education here at Wings Over the Rockies. Our education team works hard to fulfill the museum's mission to educate and inspire. This includes our many programs, such as our Wings Aerospace Pathways program, which is an enrichment program for middle and high school students. We also have our Teacher Flight program, which gives teachers the opportunity to fly in a 1930s Stearman aircraft, in addition to participating in monthly educator professional development sessions and take part in our summer courses. One of our recent accomplishments includes leading the new Aerospace Alley Education Committee. This is a group made up of organizations, K-12 schools and districts, post-secondary institutions, and industry, who all work together to promote statewide aerospace education.
Earlier this year, we had to close our doors for 3 months while learning how to protect ourselves and our community better. We also had the opportunity to produce some great new content, including new episodes of Behind the Wings on PBS, as well as tons of new videos for our Aerospace Thrust campaign. We've also been working on the new launch of Aerospace Alley. This initiative is perfect for what we want to accomplish as an organization: inspiration, education, and workforce development.
We're proud of what we've done. Wings is open and alive and working for you. We have world-class events just like tonight's very special Q&A with Eileen, Jean, and Harrison. And we're constantly finding ways to make aerospace accessible for everyone.
There are many ways to help us continue bringing you amazing programs, media, and exhibits. You can text Aerospace Alley to 76278. For those of you watching from GiveSmart, head on over to the left side of the screen and find the donate button. And for our YouTube audience, you can head on over to wingsmuseum.org/give. Also tonight, you should be sure to browse and bid on all of our unique silent auction items.
What's important is that we need your help. 1/3 of American museums are currently at risk of closing. We're open, our programs are running, we've built new programs, and we're confident that there's a place for us in Colorado as long as we keep looking up.
Thank you all so much for joining us here tonight, and thank you for your support. Now, let's get back to the program.
Jack, could you say a few things about Aerospace Alley? And, why do you think that this, you're participating here today, so thank you for supporting that. And what do you think is the best way for Aerospace Alley to achieve these goals of expanding air and space education in Colorado?
Well, I appreciate very much being asked to assist in the launch as well as in the activities of Aerospace Alley. It is an extremely important Mountain West initiative. It is one of those things that, of course, being located in one of the major national hubs of aerospace activity in the Denver area, as well as that stretches into Colorado Springs that you're so familiar with. The Air Force Academy, the Space Force and inaugural headquarters is there. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if it remains there over time. And then you have major corporations, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, all of which have supported the Wings Over the Rockies effort to create Aerospace Alley, and the individuals that are involved, John Barry, Major General John Barry, Clay Lacey, all of whom have stepped up to support Wings as well as Aerospace Alley. It just shows a commitment in the community to the educational themes, to the engineering themes, and to the experiences that Aerospace Alley will provide young people throughout the Mountain West. It's an initiative that is extremely important to take on, and one which we can always say we wish had happened earlier, but now let's go for it.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you for taking part in this. And also, Jean, I wanted to ask you, how did you become involved with Wings Over the Rockies and Aerospace Alley, and why is that important to you to be part of this effort?
I think the Aerospace Alley is an extremely important element, and I think they've got a good model they were flying. I was there about 2-3 years ago when basically the EAA basically was having the Eagles program that they're having. We were flying a teacher from the Denver area along with basically a student in the same school. And they're attempting to cover a good portion of the schools that existed in the Denver area. I think the key thing that is necessary for the young people addressing space is how do we provide them the hands-on experience? It's one thing to hear it in class, study it in books, but somehow or other they got to get the touch, the feel. They have to experience what they are planning to start doing for the rest of their life. I look at the co-op program. Is there such a thing? We used very successful out at NASA. We were hiring based on the co-ops, the young people that came in from college. Is Aerospace Alley, does it have a co-op affiliate there where you could provide this kind of an experience? Say, yeah, this is what I want to do, or no, I don't quite like that, or we ought to go there. So I think that the Aerospace Alley is going to provide, or can provide, this hands-on experience that young people need in order to select the direction for the rest of their life and provide the fuel to keep the aerospace industry going in later years. Young people are fuel for the workforce.
We're coming to a close here, and I wanted to give each of you a chance. I think we'll start with you, Jean, to make a closing statement. If there's anything that you want to say, maybe a question that I didn't ask today, or maybe a topic that you think is really important that you'd like to make a closing statement on. So Jean, we'll start with you.
I think that the challenge our nation faces is building an educated workforce to address problems that we have yet to visualize. Issues that basically are beyond the realm of imagination. So it's really a question. You talked about earlier when we started off about problem solving. Somewhere along the line, it would almost be a great idea. I talked to Johnson Space Center, the center director, that somewhere along the line, it would be great if we could establish a boot camp for young project managers where they can take something, run with it for a while. If they make mistakes, learn from them. For some reason, it seems that learning to a great extent comes from seeing something you did wrong and then basically recognizing that and then moving forward and using that as part of the learning experience for growth. So somewhere we have to provide young people, the workforce of the future, the opportunity to grow without fear that if they make a mistake, they're out of a job or they're going to have to make some changes. Mistakes are part of life, and we have to learn to live with them and move forward and grow with them.
I might, Eileen, I might build on two or three things that Gene has said about hands-on experience and what Aerospace Alley can do to provide that in many different ways. My own flight experience began when I was 29 years old. That's pretty late. But from that experience of actually, let's call it hands-on experience with flying jet aircraft and helicopters, I developed a confidence in myself and in the machines I was flying that was extremely important feedback into the overall astronaut experience. And putting young people and teachers and others into a situation where they can develop that kind of confidence in themselves, as well as in what the machines that they're flying, and understand that if you make a mistake, you get yourself out of that mistake. Deke Slayton made an extremely important point of that many, many different times, is that the T-38 that we flew and the helicopters that we flew were dynamic simulators. And that if something happened psychologically, you had to deal with it. Whereas our other simulators, you just press a button and start over again. The aircraft, you can't do that. And that is a tremendous confidence builder. It, as you say, you learn that if you make a mistake, you have to figure out a way to get out of it. And Aerospace Alley, I think, is going to provide those kinds of experiences in many different ways, not just in flight, but also in the kind of programs that Gene has talked about. I strongly encourage everyone to become supporters and active supporters in the new initiative that is now called Aerospace Alley in the Denver area.
Yeah, and I think, all three of us, by being here today, are, I think our presence really speaks for itself. We really believe in this mission of Aerospace Alley. And in closing, I want to thank all of our listeners who are here today, the individual sponsors and the corporate sponsors that support this effort of Aerospace Alley. And also our great Wings Over the Rockies Air and Space Museum, which I absolutely love. The new campus of exploration of flight at Centennial Airport, and all of the inspirational programs that are being developed that we need and love. You're a critical part of keeping America first in air and space. So thank you very much, and I hope you all have a great evening.
As we close out this evening, on behalf of the Wings Over the Rockies board, staff, and volunteers, thanks for joining us tonight. In support of our museum and the launch of Aerospace Alley as a concept to put Colorado on the map as the leading provider for workforce development to the aerospace sector for our great country. Good evening.
Welcome to the Boeing Blue Sky Aviation Gallery, located on the Wings Over the Rockies Exploration of Flight campus. This facility is located on one of the busiest general aviation airports in the country, where guests have the ability to get up close and personal with the field of aerospace. The Blue Sky Gallery is home to active aircraft, FAA-approved simulators, a drone zone, exhibits that demonstrate the forces of flight, and our Clay Lacy Field of Dreams flight ramp. Our ramp has 17 tie-down spaces and a helipad that routinely hosts unique aircraft. Activities you can experience on the ramp include our Teacher Flight program, which flies local educators in a 1936 Stearman. The Young Eagles program that takes kids on a free flight over the Colorado Front Range. And recurring fly-ins and weekend showcases that give guests incredible access to aircraft and pilots from all eras and industries. The Exploration of Flight campus will continue to grow as a hub for aerospace with the addition of our Osmond Black Sky Space Gallery. Like the Blue Sky Gallery, this space-focused facility will use interactive, hands-on learning to educate our future aerospace leaders. What we're creating here at Exploration of Flight is helping to establish the great state of Colorado as the nation's Aerospace Alley. The Blue Sky Gallery is a place where you can get inspired, you can learn, or you can actively engage in the field of aerospace. I hope you discover your place in Aerospace Alley during your next visit.
Hello, my name is Michael Allen. I'm a volunteer and member of the board of directors at Wings Over the Rockies. I've spent 37 years of my life in aerospace, and I'm excited to be here today to talk about Aerospace Alley. As part of my role with Wings Over the Rockies, I chair the education committee for the board of directors. And one of the programs that we have, you can see behind me today, is the build of an RV-12 airplane, which is being built by students. As part of the Wings Aerospace Pathways, students have access to technical skills like building airplanes and getting involved in the skills required to be an airframe and power plant mechanic. And there's programs for aspiring pilots. Through the generous support from the Ray Foundation and the Captain Jeppesen Foundation, aspiring pilots have the opportunity to get their ground certifications, going to ground school, and also some opportunities to learn how to fly powered airplanes and gliders. Wings Over the Rockies created and supports the Aerospace Alley Education Committee. Starting in October of 2020, the Education Committee will be spearheading a program to bring CTE aviation pathways to the state of Colorado through the school systems. This will allow any school district in the state of Colorado to access these programs, keeping in mind that many of the schools in the state are in rural areas and don't have access to programs like these within their own communities. Through all these diverse programs that we have through Wings Over the Rockies, we're trying to bring together resources so that we can support students throughout the state in their quest to join the aviation and aerospace profession. You can help by donating meaningfully to Wings Over the Rockies and the aerospace programs that support children. These programs are going to be the future of aerospace in this country and the future of aerospace and aviation in Colorado. Thank you.
Good evening to everyone at Wings Over the Rockies and in Aerospace Alley. I'm glad to be here today with you. I'm Tracy Sternin-Woolley, daughter of Gene Sternin, last man to walk on the moon. When my dad and Jack explored Taurus Littrow in 1972, I was 9 years old, and I was so proud of him. I remember going on the Today Show and telling them that he promised to bring me a moonbeam. That would be a special gift for a 9-year-old that idolized her daddy. But he did something even more exciting. On the last spacewalk, he went out next to the lunar rover and he leaned down and he wrote my initials, TDC, in the lunar dust. Now that is a gesture that only he and I will ever be able to share. Dad's last words on the moon were, "America's challenge of today forged man's destiny for tomorrow." And he loved talking to students to inspire them to go out and find their destiny. Please consider joining us in Wings Over the Rockies, develop America's Aerospace Alley, and our next generation of space explorers. Thank you.
Hi, I'm retired Lieutenant Colonel Tracy LaTourette, call sign Jackie O. I flew the F-16 with the Colorado Air National Guard right down the road at Buckley Air Force Base. I'm an Aerospace Alley champion because I'm an Aerospace Alley product. I grew up in Evergreen, just west of Denver, high in the mountains, above even the clouds on some days. And at night, I felt so close to the stars, like I could reach up and touch them. I cheered for my brother on his first solo in Boulder. I looked forward to going to Stapleton Airport and watching the planes fly in and out as we got to pick my dad up from work every week. And I was thrilled to win my first ever state gymnastics championship title down in Colorado Springs at the U.S. Air Force Academy. If you haven't checked it out yet, you really need to go experience it for yourself. The first time I walked through those hallowed halls, I knew there was something special about that place. I felt like I had to walk a little taller to pay my respect to the warriors who had gone before me, some paying the ultimate price to sacrifice for our great nation's freedom. When I accepted my Air Force Academy nomination from President George Bush Sr. and launched my Air Force career, I had no idea that I would someday return and become Colorado's first lady fighter pilot. That option didn't even exist when I was a cadet. All I knew was that for my first solo, I would get to fly over Colorado Springs, the majestic mountains as the backdrop, enjoying all this great state has to offer young aviators. I am so grateful for the mentors I've had along the way. I encourage you to be a mentor, find a mentor. Everyone needs a wingman on their aerospace journey. Whether you already have deep ties to aerospace or you are just discovering your love of the sky and the stars, you'll find there's a place for you right here in Colorado's Aerospace Alley.